name is Arun, and you are with the AI with Arun show. Our guest today is a very special one, Anita. So, Anita is the Executive Director of the Center of Business Analytics at Melbourne Business School. She has helped countless organizations further their analytics and digital maturity through industry engaged research, executive education program, and industry access to master of business analytics talent. She is responsible for industry partnerships across the Melbourne Business School's business analytics ecosystem to accelerate data-driven decision making through advanced analytics. Anita previously held Commonwealth Bank's institutional banking education client coverage team, driving 30% portfolio growth in just about 2 years and issuing the world's first certified green bond for the university sector. She has spent about 15 years of her career in the US in leadership roles at GE Capital and MIT's Sloan School of Management before returning to Australia. She brings a blend of academia and commercial industry knowledge to create synergies. She's also an MBA from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business and a Bachelor of Commerce and Bachelor of Arts from the University of Melbourne. Anita, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Arun. I really appreciate the invite.
Awesome. So let's jump in, Anita. So tell our viewers, what initially drew you to the field of data analytics and AI?
I've always had a very strong interest in business. I think that's my primary interest, as you can see from the Bachelor of Commerce, as well as the MBA with a major in banking. So as you said, I spent most of my career in the US across both the banking sector at GE Capital and working with students at MIT Sloan from the Master of Finance program. So I really, in my most recent role before becoming the executive director here at the Centre for Business Analytics, I was the director of institutional banking and markets within the education sector coverage team. And during that time, the Commonwealth Bank here in Australia is one of the big four banks. It's actually the largest commercial bank for the retail sector. So it has a fantastically large data set. And each time we would, talk to the universities about their financial arrangements and their banking arrangements, we would always leverage our data analytics team very heavily whenever we went out to see clients, because we could add that extra level of value in terms of what types of stores should they be setting up on campus from a student experience. We had all of that fantastic data at our fingertips. So when I had the opportunity to return to the education sector and blend out those two skill sets with the industry knowledge of the banking sector and understanding what data can do and helping our industry partners, I thought it was an ideal opportunity for me to be able to give back to society and leverage the knowledge that I've had working in both sides of the fence.
That's great. That's great, Anita. And just to know that you are a mentor yourself, right? You're in such a senior position yourself, and you have been a mentor to many people. Who were your mentors early on in your career?
You were asking me to draw back very far now, Arun. You had said, earlier that I spent about 15 years of my career in the US, and I was fortunate enough to do an MBA at Chicago Booth. And during that time, unfortunately, it was not the data age when I graduated from my MBA. So there was no formal data analytics training within a functional discipline like marketing analytics, finance analytics, supply chain analytics. It was very much, there was econometrics and statistics in one side, and then there was like marketing and managerial decision making on the other. So one of my mentors that I'm indebted to is Professor George Wu from the Chicago Booth School of Business. He actually celebrated his 27th anniversary of teaching there. And what he taught was really looking at that psychology of decision making within a business context, which a lot of our algorithms and our models these days with the large data sets that we have are looking ultimately to leverage. So in his class, he really covered a lot around the heuristics of the human mind, how humans are always, the loss aversion and the risk aversion plays a stronger role than, any rewards that are likely to happen. So again, that was a very long time ago. But now with the technology to capture the data, I'm still using his teachings in what I think about today in terms of what models are developed and how they're used and designed to work around the human brain and that psychology.
Great. And as you mentioned that, a lot of things have changed from when you were a student to where you are now. What advice would you have for young people or young professionals?
That's another passion area of mine, Arun, because I was working very closely from a career advising standpoint with the Master of Finance students over at MIT Sloan. And some of the advice remains the same. Don't be wedded to job titles and organizations. Have a think about what you're really passionate about and what you want to learn, even if it's outside your traditional job scope. My path was very much led by what I was passionate about. I got involved at GE Capital in a lot of the on-campus recruiting activity, and through that, I found my passion for working in the education sector and students. So don't be wedded too closely to your first role, and thinking only about job title, seniority, or the organisation you're working for, because life really is that career path really is a marathon. So try also to look for champions and sponsors who will advocate for you. So you always advocate for yourself, but recognize that some parts are not in your control. So where you can have sponsors and champions that can advocate for you, I think that is always a worthy piece of advice.
Yeah, that's indeed a very worthy piece of advice, and I can second every single word that you said over there. Very wise words coming in. Excellent. So Anita, let's just jump into your core area of expertise. What are some of the trends and the opportunities that you see in the area of data analytics and business analytics?
For us in Australia, we've just released voluntary AI guidelines. And I think really at the core of most organisations and what they're thinking about is how do they deploy AI ethically and responsibly, so they can continue to have the social license, to gain all the gains like productivity, innovation from some of these fantastic technologies, but really mitigate the harms that can be done through some of the biases and looking at some of those models that I was talking about earlier across the various areas, especially in high risk settings where you're looking at PII, healthcare information, and employment or making employment decisions, things like that as well.
Great. And in terms of the trends that are coming in, what kind of trends are you seeing there, Anita?
One of the key areas that our Faculty of Engineering and IT are looking on is, of course, technology assurance, making sure that many AI systems are not simply black boxes and that there are some ways of having that transparency, especially in regulated industries like healthcare and finance, where the stakeholders need to understand why the decisions were made, for example, credit modeling, credit scoring, and having some clarity and transparency. So I think our technology faculty are working very heavily on that field in improving trust and maintaining some level of accountability in the technology systems. Our friends over at the Centre for AI and Digital Ethics at the Melbourne Law School are, of course, looking at how the new voluntary regulations and how they've been opining on the mandatory AI regulations that will be coming in, how to blend some of the things we've seen in the US around focusing on innovation in regulation and with GDPR in the Europe setting, how to sort of merge the two. Australia is a little bit of a combination of the two in terms of the risk aversion profile and the risk appetite, but also, trying to encourage that level of innovation as well, and developing and furthering the Australian Privacy Act. So those are, I think, key right now in terms of, as these technologies evolve so fast, everyone's in this big arms race, it feels like. We need to obviously still put in some guardrails so that we, as consumers, are aware of what is happening.
But that's great. These technologies are clearly evolving. They're still maturing. Many of them are at different stages in terms of where they are. At the same time, you're right, there are a lot of guardrails that need to be put in place. But Anita, in terms of what is available today, how can businesses actually effectively utilize these technologies where they are? I mean, needless to say, there's a lot of maturity coming in, but just based on what you see, how can companies best utilize these technologies?
For me, what I've found is the whole ChatGPT revolution in November, it's just made it mass market. Right. So these machine learning tools probably existed back in the 60s and the 70s, but now they've become mainstream. That's the largest change, because I think all of those technology companies back in the 2008, 2009 era were already using recommendation engines. It's just that they weren't apparent and weren't in the hands of the users. In fact, Australia's on, I think there was a Nine News poll here, we've gotten voted as the most AI addicted country. So I think we've ranked the highest in terms of the number of folks using ChatGPT to search for things, not in terms of course, the AI creation. So what I've seen naturally is, large deployment of chatbots within a customer service setting, looking at improving supply chain and operations. These things have always existed, and lowering costs. But what I'm actually most excited about, and I mentioned this earlier, is in terms of the societal impact of some of these technologies. And what I'm excited to see is some of the ability to make medical diagnoses earlier, because the computing behind these technologies, their ability to spot patterns that the human mind cannot do, will lead to speedier diagnoses. And then the next part of that would be, again, looking at drug development and ability to cure or prevent some of those diseases that have been hard to crack. So I'm really excited for the potential of healthcare in looking at some of these technologies and going beyond some of those, chatbots and things like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, chatbots, while they're one part of the thing, but the real value would be in truly life-saving and which are truly transformational in nature. Anita, and do you see any industries that are adopting it more versus some of the others, and also in terms of business functions? For example, let's say finance, HR, supply chain. Do you see some business functions adopt AI more than others?
Oh, absolutely. We were fortunate enough actually to host Doug Gray, who's the head of Director of Data Science at Walmart. He was here from the US. He had co-written a book with one of the stakeholders in our community, and he was able to share some of his insights across the retail sector. And for me, when I was at GE Capital in the US, I was very huge focus on Six Sigma and operational excellence. As you know, GE was very well known for that back in the day when I was part of the organization and having done some Six Sigma projects. So I think from a business perspective, being housed as a business school here, the most intuitive application for the finance application is really looking at how can we reduce costs. Right. So Doug Gray actually shared a lot of those implementations across Walmart that he's done, across the airline sector in terms of optimization. I think there's a huge potential at looking at supply chain, at looking at customer experience. That part is very easily understandable to business leaders, because what I've found is in our research here at the Centre for Business Analytics, in working on our Analytics Impact Index, where you have that senior leadership buy-in, it's so critical to getting these projects done and realizing some of those business outcomes. Because if the business leaders can't easily grasp what you're doing in the data team, you won't really generate the outcomes that you're desiring to get. I think Doug was sharing that over the course of his career, he's saved all of the organizations he's worked on. He's been keeping a tally, I think, $72 billion. I think and being able to quantify the impact that those analytics projects have had. Supply chain and operations, I think, is something that's very readily and easily understandable to most, especially in the business context.
Yeah, no, that's great. And those are some of the things that I'm also seeing, that many of these are, some of them are laggards, for example, right? But in some areas like customer service, those are truly the low-hanging fruits, as we call it. There are tons of opportunities out there that can be take advantage of existing technologies.
Absolutely.
Right. So in your area, what are some of the other technology trend that you're seeing in terms, apart from AI, for example, blockchain or any other technology that you see that could have a long-term implications in the area of data analytics and business analytics?
Within the education sector, what I'm seeing is the ability to really personalize the educational experience. We actually, obviously we talked a bit about the operational improvements that can be seen. Actually, one of our former professors here at Melbourne Business School will be coming back. He's over in Canada now as a professor, but he's coming back to campus to show us how he's developed a tool called All Day TA. Professor Joshua Gans he's actually returning to campus. I'm really excited to hear him speak tomorrow about how that's going to, I guess, revolutionize and save time for a lot of the support functions that go around teaching in the academic field. I know the professors a lot of the time, need to answer a lot of questions back and forth with their students, where they might have thousands of students that they need to respond to. That has been, I think, a game changer for an operational perspective here. But in terms of the customized learning, because we do have such a large bell curve, of course, of students, and what I found, and actually this was during COVID, actually, where we were all online and had recorded lectures, the students actually from the tail end were actually able to improve their outcomes from an academic perspective from having access to some of those tools. So now we're actually actively looking at building in some of those ability to customize their learning experience as they go through their degree program, because it will improve their educational outcomes and their access as well.
Excellent. Wonderful. Mentor, what are some of the long-term goals that you have in your field? Is there something that you could share with our viewers?
Our centre is actually 10 years old within Melbourne Business School. So we're really delighted to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. And our goal when we were set up really was helping organisations transform their decision-making from simply using dashboards and gut feel. Like a lot of these business leaders, like I was saying, did not have any data analytics or data training previously back in the 2000s, because the discipline didn't formally exist as a standalone discipline. So now our role really as a centre is really helping those business leaders understand why data analytics is important and how it can improve their business efficiency, their business performance, their customer satisfaction. Across the board, there's so many applications of data analytics that can help in a business setting, and that's where we step in as a centre. And it's super exciting now to see the eagerness with which folks want to start to deploy AI solutions into that mix as well, now that we're coming into our 10th year of helping organisations really try to transform their decision-making and transform their organisations through digitalisation.
Oh, wonderful. And are there any resources that you would recommend that people who are listening to do more in the data analytics space? Is there anything that you could do to self-learn or maybe follow?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a self-learning perspective, there's some fantastic courses on Coursera. I love doing some of those courses from Andrew, who of course is the founder of Coursera, in terms of machine learning for business, AI for business, things that have that business slant, because the leaders really can upskill in their own time and learn things that perhaps weren't formally within the academic setting back in the day when they were going through school. Having spent time at MIT, I would obviously highly endorse the MIT Tech Review. They are at the cutting edge in terms of what's happening with technology, but of course, because they have the Sloan School there, I really love the overlay of the business angle as well, because that's what we do here at Melbourne Business School at the Centre for Business Analytics, is really bringing that business lens on top of some of these technological advancements. So I think the Tech Review is an excellent one as well. The others are following a lot of the AI leaders that are on LinkedIn, Cassie Kozyrkov, Ali Miller. Cassie actually will be speaking at a conference in 2 weeks here in Australia, in Sydney. So it's run by the AI Actuaries Institute. So really, really happy to see Cassie make a trip down under to help Australian organisations here transform decision-making as well.
Wow, that's great. Look like some exciting things coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. As we close out the year, 2024, yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. So, what excites you most then about the future of AI?
It's still unfolding so rapidly. One of the areas that I would love to see is really more around the robotics and the automation on that piece, rather than just simply the LLMs. I mean, obviously the LLMs are helping the robots to learn in terms of the data sets that we're seeing, to being able to identify objects. But in terms of robotics, I feel like there's such potential there, whether it's for surgeries back in the healthcare sector again, or whether it's, to help me clean my house. I really think there's a large productivity to be gained from that as well that hasn't been captured. I know a lot of people are focusing very much on the LLMs and things where people can index and search things that already exist very, very quickly. But what I'm keen to see is more of the physical labor being removed through some of the robotics applications of within AI.
Yeah, you're so right. I can't wait for the humanoid that Elon Musk talks about to be out. Hopefully in the near future.
It's funny. I saw the movie Wild Robot. It's a kids movie, kind of. It's a cartoon, but very applicable. I would love a wild robot of my own very soon.
Now, hopefully that's coming in the near future, in a couple of years. The kind of advancement that these things have taken place, right? It's probably just a matter of time.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So, Anita, that brings us towards the last segment of our show, which is called the rapid fire round. So, are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Let's go, Arun.
All righty. All right. So, here's the first one: ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Meta Llama, Claude, and anything else that you could name. If you could use one for the rest of your life, what would you use?
For me, I think ChatGPT, just because it is, broadly accessible for my needs. I'm not over a technical audience, but from what I understand, the technical audience probably would prefer Llama, given it's open source. They can do what they really want with it. And from a Claude perspective, it's not really my cup of tea. I think ChatGPT, given its broad application and appeal, and for my purposes, is probably the one I would use.
Awesome. The second one: what is the most overrated AI trend right now?
I've got to say the word AI, Arun. Sorry to say that. Back to Cassie Kozyrkov, I really love how she simplifies things, and she has always said that because she had her wonderful machine learning for business course when she was the chief decision scientist at Google, is AI is automated instructions. You need something that has all the instructions in a box that you can automate, and at this stage, I still feel that that's what it is. And everyone loves to pepper in the word AI, but intelligence is a little bit of a stretch still for me, in my opinion.
Awesome. The third one: in one sentence, define the future of AI in your field.
It would be the personalization of educational experiences, I think, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's an amazing one in the way that, there are a lot of, people out there who are looking for very personalized education, because today education is just all over the place, right? One size fits all.
And it's just exciting because education is such an equalizer. I'm sure I've gotten the opportunities that I have due to the education that I have been fortunate enough to access. And if we are able to provide that on a broad basis to less advantaged communities, again, it's about that. For me, it's really about that societal impact that I love seeing. So it's a very evolving area that I'm very passionate about.
Well, that's you're right. I can't agree with you more on this. Okay. Then the next one: what's the one AI skill that everyone should learn today to be better prepared for tomorrow?
This is one of the things I lament about Australia. Its STEM performance in general is not as high as some of the other countries. And for me, in seeing AI as a skill that everyone should be prepared for, not everyone needs to learn to code. I do believe what Jensen Huang said, where most will just be, plain English or plain language coding. But data literacy, I think, is something that is so important across the board, and that is ultimately powered by STEM. So I think Australia needs to do a little bit of a better job, starting potentially at the grassroots level with STEM, just so that everyone can have some level of data literacy, because AI is not magic. It's powered by data. At the end of the day, it's those boring Excel spreadsheets that we still use in the 2000s, and looking at numbers and being able to understand, probabilities and the likelihood. That is what feeds AI right now. So data literacy, I think, is a really important one for everyone.
Okay, wonderful. And then the last one: if AI could take over one of your daily tasks completely, what would it be?
It would be robotics. I think I would have my robotic cleaner and my robotic driver. And I think, I'm really excited about actually Waymo. I think next time I go to the US, I'm very, very keen to try that out. I've heard really, really good feedback. And that would be such a game changer, I think, if we could have that here in Australia.
That indeed, that would be, yes. I've seen a few of them in the city, and they're always amazing. It's amazing what human technology and human brains have being able to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's always got to be a human there, I think. That's the human in the loop is just so important to mitigate some of the worst use cases potentially that we've seen, but maybe that's a story for another day.
Indeed. All right, Anita, so that brings us towards the end of our show. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our viewers. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Arun. I really appreciate the time.